Our first meeting of the spring semester in our 20th year of existence. I can't believe hardly myself that the Socratic Club has been going for 20 years and has seen ups and downs. COVID years were kind of tough and made things difficult, but thanks for coming. The Socratic Club, in case you were wondering, even though it's called a club, it's not a club in the sense that you have to join or be a member. You can just show up. The name Socratic Club is actually, it's a way of honoring and commemorating the Oxford Socratic Club of the mid-1900s that was started at Oxford University and was presided over for most of its history by famous Christian author and apologist C.S. Lewis. And they took as their motto, follow the argument wherever it leads, which is our motto too. And the idea is we're interested in examining questions philosophically, but like the Oxford Socratic Club, the Gonzaga Socratic Club is thematically focused on issues in Christian worldview. The Oxford Socratic Club, C.S. Lewis describes the origins of the club. He didn't start the club, actually. It was actually started as a women's club, a women's intellectual club. And you have to think about mid-1900s. There was no TV. There was no, I mean, you could listen to the radio, but there was no internet, obviously. So what did you do for entertainment? You gathered in a room with people and argued. So clubs on the Oxford campus were very popular. There were a number of them. But there was an interest in starting a club that gave a place for people with who were interested in religion, specifically Christianity, but also wanted to have a forum where people of very different religious views could talk about religion and Christianity. And that's what motivated the start of the Socratic Club, and it kind of has motivated the club here. We address Christian worldview issues, but like our talk for today, it's not always explicitly. This is sort of the Christian theological view. We've had atheists and critics of Christianity, and we've addressed difficult problems in Christianity, like the problem of evil, on a number of occasions. If you're interested in any of these topics, take a look at the archive website of the Socratic Club, and there are a number of videos there. I've been slow in getting the last handful of them up on the website, but there are a bunch there, a bunch of resources to take a look at. So as I said, this is the 20th year the club has been in existence. As also I said, it's a club, not in the sense that you have to join. Just show up. Take a look at the website. If you want to be added to our mailing list, you can just there's a form there for doing that, or just email me if you'd like. We have a very interesting and special talk today from an interesting and special person. Wisdom is, of course, a topic that is of central interest to the philosophical tradition and also to most religious traditions as well. I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker for this afternoon, my philosophy colleague, George Watson. I first got to know Mr. Watson when he was here as a student in the 90s. I was a young philosophy instructor with a new PhD, and Watson was in my ancient philosophy course. When it came time to teach the students about the third man argument in Plato's Parmenides concerning the forms, some of you will know what I'm talking about. It's a very, very kind of technical argument, and the Parmenides is a very technical dialogue. I might say he boxed my philosophical ears, my young philosophical ears, my inexperienced philosophical ears, not all that differently from how Parmenides boxed the philosophical ears of the young Socrates in the Parmenides, via Plotinian arguments that left me feeling stunned as if by a torpedo fish. That's a reference to Plato's Meno. However, rather than being annoyed by the impudence of this student of mine, I was impressed by his philosophical acumen. As for Mr. Watson, after a long journey that led him through many interesting places, including studies in philosophy, theology, and mathematics in places like the University of California and Notre Dame, I was thrilled to see his name listed as a new philosophy instructor starting in fall of 2022. I actually remember the email I sent him. I said, Are you the George Watson?
The one and only, yes.
And in fact, he was the George Watson. He was the same intriguing person I recalled from years ago, with wide-ranging interests framed by a deep commitment to study classic texts in philosophy and literature, especially as these texts inform what is now called the Catholic intellectual tradition, which is a particular interest and priority of the Gonzaga Socratic Club. I encourage you to find out more about Mr. Watson yourself. If you're a student, look into the opportunity to take a philosophy class with him. You'll be intrigued, I'm sure. Watson's interest in the great tradition of philosophical text finds expression in our topic for today, wisdom. The term philosophy is, after all, literally Greek for love of wisdom. Mr. Watson plans to lead us in a conversation about what wisdom is, and in a distinctly Socratic way, how ignorance might be a step toward cultivating wisdom. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Watson to the Gonzaga Socratic Club today.
Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me if I just speak here?
Use the mic. It's good.
So I use the mic. Come on, I like walking around. How many people here are in the Socratic Club? Who's chewing gum in my class? How many people were in the Socratic Club? None? You turn out? How many people just might be grad students? Any philosophy majors? One. Two? No? Grad student?
These guys are grad students.
Oh, I know. The grad students chewing gum in my class. Okay, so most of you, are you dragoon by offers of points to show up today? All right. So we'll just take it as it goes. I'll ask questions if you don't mind asking them. Do you want to know my background in any way, shape, or form? You do want to know. My dad was in the Air Force, and so we lived all over the world, and I lived in Greece when I was a kid. So I learned some Greek, not classical Greek, but I got to see where Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics, the Epicureans all walked around Athens. Then we moved to Colorado Springs, and George Myro was there teaching philosophy because he'd be drafted if he didn't join the Air Force and teach philosophy at the Air Force Academy. So my dad was teaching there, so I got to know him quite well. And then I ran into him in Berkeley about 10 years later. And I still think he's the finest philosophical teacher I've ever had, in the terms that he was very patient with the students, and he would stay after classes and talk and discuss things. And he was always shooting for clarity. Be clear about what your questions are. This is a very low mic. Does the mic go higher?
Yes, either way. Or I can ready for your phone.
I'll probably break the wire.
In my experience, Mr. Watson is not known for his technical skills.
No, I'm not. I like to walk around when I talk. Come on, tight.
Yeah. If you'd like, you can just hold the mic if you want to take it out of his hand. Well, you can take it out,
No,
or you can do your Freddie Mercury.
It's okay. I met Fred Mercury before he became famous. Yes. Okay.
Ask Mr. Watson for a list of the famous
People that he has
met. And so if you're in
So when I was there, I used to carry this around everywhere I went. You see this? Plotinus is the Aeneas. Now, Plotinus has become very hot in the last decade or so. But back then, no, you were supposed to carry Rawls' Justice around if you had any credence whatsoever, which is about twice as thick as this. But I carried this around, and I said, if you really want to understand Plato, and you really want to understand Aristotle, you need to read Plotinus, because he understands them better than anybody else. He was thought to be a mystic and everything like that, and so I was given askance looks. I like ancient philosophy because there's not that much more literature you have to read before you read ancient philosophy, and so you can kind of get your feet on the ground and get going. All right. Let's go to the next slide. Well, what does it mean to say what price wisdom? What's that a reference to? Anybody? Anybody? There's two references there. Nobody? Anybody? No? Wisdom is a price above rubies, the Bible. And then what price? Glory? Yes? No? Okay. We'll just move on to the next one. Not moving on to the next one. Did you know tentacles not my thing?
I think the mouse will click on the screen, and maybe they can move the mouse around. Now, you right click into where, no, don't do that. Or you can do next, that'll work.
Oh, next will work?
Yeah, we'll do the same thing.
Not working?
There you go.
You're left to
Well, you're not clicking it.
I am clicking.
Okay, all right.
Come on down and click it. Anybody else want to? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I want to mix classical literature, philosophy with biblical passages and show you that given that they're all living about the same time, same situation in life, mainly that you could die at any time. If you read the life of Augustine, he has friends that are dying here, there, and anywhere. Get sick one day and dead the next day. So their death is always hanging around. There's no guarantee. Like, we tend to feel that we will go to the hospital, we will get medical care, and we will somehow survive at least another week, 20 more years. All right, so where is wisdom? Where shall wisdom be found? This place of understanding. Now we have to do this again. Bingo. Now bingo. There we go. Come on. How did I get it to work last time? There we go. All right. Whispers of immortality. This is a quote from the Phaedo. But when returning to herself, the soul passes into the other world, the region of purity and eternity and of immortality, and unchangeableness, which are her kindred, and with them she ever lives. When she is by herself and is not let or hindered, and she ceases from her erring ways and becomes being in communion with the unchanging, is unchanging. And this state of the soul is called wisdom. All right, well, that's kind of like the foundational text, you might say, of philosophy, if you believe philosophy is the search for wisdom. Does that make sense? Does everybody know what the Phaedo was? Has anybody read the Phaedo here? Anyone? We have one hand. Do we get a second hand, third hand? Can we get four? Four-ish? You going to say four-ish?
She's reading it now.
Ah, okay. Do you like it?
It's interesting.
Okay. So, this is basically, I think, if you want the essence of Plato and the soul, it's right here. So how does your soul seek wisdom, right? How do you do that? Well, if I can hit next, it'll work. We will find out. Maybe. Perhaps not. How do I get this? There we go. So let's look at this. In Plato's Meno, 82b to 88, the question of how to construct a square twice, is there a way to get this out of the way? Like, can I do that? Come on. There we go. How do you construct a square twice the area of a given square as opposed to a slave boy? That is, construct a square double the area of the square ABCD. I'm going to have to step away from this mic because I just can't stand it. I'll come out to the audience. Speak louder. Do you hear me? All right. Does everybody see the problem? There's a slave boy, and he's not had that much mathematics according to Meno, his master. I think this is working. Can you see that? So given a square of area 1, each side is 1, how do you construct the square double the area of square ABCD? Did people have constructions in geometry? Did anybody take geometry in high school anymore? Did you have constructions? The straight edge? Tempest? All right. So the boy knows a little bit of math, but he doesn't know that much. He makes a conjecture. He says, you want twice the area, double the size, right? Double the size, it won't double the size. There we go. The boy makes a plausible conjecture. Double the length of the size of the original square, and that may generate a new square that has twice the original area. Socrates leaves the board and realizes the approach would create a square 4 times the size of the original square. As the original square has size length 1 unit, the original area is 1 unit squared. But the new square would have size of twice that of the length of 1 unit. So the size would have lengths of 2 units, and 2 times 2 is the area of the new square would be, class? Anybody? 4 units. Take a look at that for a second. Does that make sense? So there's the original square, side 1, 1, 1. The boy is supposed to construct a square twice as big. Where he comes over here and he says, we'll make each side twice as long. Makes sense, right? Does that make sense? How many people might have given that as an answer if they were asked on the SAT? No, yeah, it makes sense. But, one word. There it is. You end up getting sides of 2, but that gives you 2 times 2 is 4. It's too big. They go on to explore a little bit more. He actually tries sides 3 and stuff like that. But Socrates eventually leads him to consider this. Take the big square. Take the 2 by 2 square. That has area 4. And Socrates says, why don't you draw the lines to the midpoints? Does that make sense? So MN and P, PQ, QM. All right? And when you do that, you now have this square 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Each square has an area of 1. Right? Does that make sense? Sort of mirrors. When I look at the thing again, here's a square of area of 1, but what does that midpoint diagonal, you want to call it a midpoint diagonal, what does that do to this square? It divides it in half. What does this midpoint diagonal do to this square? It divides it in half. What does it do to this square? It divides it in half. What does it do to that square? It divides it in half, right? So we have 8 squares, area total 4. That makes sense? So take the 4 inner squares, inner triangles, I call 1, 2, 3, 4. You get the square N, N, P, Q. What's the area of the inner square? Anybody? 2. We have a winner. Okay, so now you have constructed a square of area 2, but there's a problem. What's the problem? All right, so here's what I just told you right there. Take a look at that if you want to. And we end up with a square of twice the area ABCD has been constructed, but the problem is what? Since the inner square NPQ must have an area of 2 square units, what then must be the length of the sides of square MNQ? It must not be a number. Must it not be a number when multiplied by itself that produces the number 2? Now the boy does not know anything about concerning the square root of 2. What does the square root of 2 do when you multiply it by itself? 2. But is the square root of 2 an integer? Is it a fraction? What is it? No, it's not. What is it then? Studio contestant? It's what the Pythagoreans would say was a, back to algebra 2, irrational number, yes? But is that a number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? So what is it? Anybody? Gonzaga rowing? Anybody? If you're here, you get to be asked questions. Anybody? Nobody? No? No? Nobody at all? It's not an integer, right? It's not a fraction, so it's called an irrational number by the Pythagoreans. All right? So it's something weird. Now, how did the slave boy do this? How did the slave boy come to realize that the little square constructed this way, how does he know that's the right answer? So Socrates and Meno, Meno's the owner of the slave boy, discuss whether it's possible that the souls of humans have a prior existence than their earthly existence, and whether the boy may have seen that which is true and eternal, and somehow, through the proper guidance, was able to recall that to double the size of a square, the length of the new sides would have to be the length of the square root of 2 times the original size. So this is the very early Platonic theory about how we recognize eternal truths, right? Things that are true in all cases, all situations. that somehow your soul existed in the world of ideal forms, and you kind of saw everything as it actually was. There's no doubt about it. There's no lack of clarity. You don't have to figure it out. And then when you come into this world, you come born into this world, if you're asked the right questions in the right way, something will click. It's kind of like somebody talking about a friend from grade school, and you kind of remember them, and you don't quite remember, and then there's something funny about them. I don't know what it is. He has a scar, super red hair, I don't know, 6 fingers, something. You go, oh yeah, that's who that is. There's no doubt in your mind anymore. All right, Socrates and then go on to explore what virtue is, what is virtue, and how it is acquired. Is it acquired via teaching or arousing an inner knowledge? And does that knowledge consist in knowing that it's always better to do what is right at all times and places to all persons, to never harm anyone, for in doing so, if you harm somebody, you harm your soul. In the Greek, it's almost like you blind your soul. Each time you do something wrong, there's like a flash against your eyes. Now, Socrates and Meno go on to talk about famous Athenians who were thought to be virtuous and noble and everything else, but their children don't quite turn out to be so virtuous and so noble. And the question is, if their parents have the money, and they did, and there's people that can teach them wrestling and horse riding and everything else, why can they hire a sophist to teach them how to handle rhetoric in such a way you can win a court case? Back then, if you were sued, and the rich were sued all the time because they had money, you had to defend yourself in the court. There was no lawyer you could hire. So the more agile you were with your rhetoric and everything else, the chances are of winning the suit. If that's the case, then why didn't most of the sons that they talk about of the rich and famous, why don't they turn out to be virtuous people? Does that make sense? Anybody have any ideas why sometimes the children of the rich and powerful go bad? That's like a Hollywood, it's just like one of those shows on cable TV or something, right? Rich kids who went bad. Nothing against him personally, but Hunter Biden, right? Hunter Biden had every break in the world, and it hasn't turned out quite the way it should have turned out. Anybody, studio audience, yes?
Parents are busy.
Well, not as busy as nowadays. I mean, they're not like going to work every day at 9 o'clock, right? The rich people in Athens mainly own land around Athens where you can grow olive trees and everything else, and they live off of that. And some investments going to colonies and stuff like that, but they're not like his next junior's going to go with his nanny all day. He's going to go to a private school from 1st grade to 12th grade, then go off to college. Why else might it be that somebody who grows up quite rich and
just get spoiled.
speak up?
They get spoiled.
They can be spoiled, yes.
Ungrateful, I guess.
They can be spoiled and become ungrateful, and things are too easy for them. What else might it be? Anybody? Yes?
They might not see the need to.
Speak up.
They might not see the need to.
Yeah, the money, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on Hunter Biden, but Hunter Biden spent $2 million on parties in a 3-year period, right? But he didn't pay his taxes on that money, but a Hollywood friend paid them taxes on that money, right? Kind of an imbalance there, per se, you might say. All right, so if things come to you too easily, you have too much wealth, you have too much fun, why strive to be virtuous? Does that make sense? Like a trust fund baby. Think of a trust fund baby, right? I mean, I used to tutor trust fund babies, and, well, their lives were not the most virtuous I've ever witnessed. But what's missing? What's the essential thing if you want to be virtuous? If you want to live a virtuous life, what's the essential thing you must have? Anybody? Yes.
Maybe compassion.
Compassion helps enormously. But one more thing. Yes. Speak up. Well, you could have society's morals because they ask, what, if you read the Republic, who's read the Republic here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Way back when? Yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah. And what do they say in the Republic? Thrasymachus. What is it to be virtuous?
Strong.
Be strong and, yeah, get back at your enemies before they get back at you, right? That's what you have to do to survive in this world. It's dog eat dog. And if somebody does something to you harmful, strike back at them before they be Donald Trump, basically, right? Nothing against Donald Trump, but be Trump. If somebody attacks you, you attack 5 times back more. Even if they're a federal judge, you attack them 5 times back more. All right. Socrates spends a good part, and his brother and a few others spent a good part of the Republic until Thrasymachus stomps off in a huff, saying, no, it's not good to hurt other people who may have hurt you, because it hurts your own soul. Make sense? So that's leading back to this. Given that, well, what's the one more thing you have to want to do? It's the linchpin. Anybody?
When you ask in terms of what you want to do, you have to desire to be.
You have to desire to be virtuous. You can't go to school and learn your multiplication tables of virtue and become virtuous, right? You have to seek it out. And in life, unfortunately, I drive a Coeur d'Alene every morning, and the drivers that I drive alongside, I will not call virtuous because they're tailgating, cutting me off, changing lanes without signaling. One guy came all the way over from the far lane, swaying through everybody, and then exited for some reason. They don't seem to be virtuous drivers. At that point, I say to myself, I wish I had a 2.5-ton Ford truck from the 40s with a 6-inch back steel trailer. I could slam on my brakes and wipe out all the tailgaters and then chase after the others. It's one thing to want to be virtuous, it's another thing to learn how to be virtuous throughout all the vagaries of life. Does that make sense? Yes? Now, recollection is an opening gambit by Plato, but I don't believe he really believes it. I think he's asking this: how is it that whatever's in here or here, depending on how you think about the mind or thinking part of your body, how does it reason in what we call nowadays a logical manner? How's that happen? Why should, as a professor once said to me, why should that neuronal spaghetti within your skull be capable of logical reasoning? Why should that be the case? Anybody? Anybody not using their phone, Gonzaga rowing? Anybody?
I'm taking notes.
You're taking notes, really?
Yes.
Send it to me. 3 times in a row, yes? No, I'm asking you the question. We don't, it's 400 BC. We don't know all that goes on in here, right? Some people think it's down in here. Why should whatever in here, let's presume it's in here. Whatever in there, why should it be able to reason logically? First order predicate logic. Why? Anybody? Somebody? Nobody? Yes? You have to speak up. We'll go you, then you.
Well, why is it necessarily like you could ask the same thing of like why does a tree grow? That's like what it is meant to do. Like we evolved the capacity to reason for survival. Like that is why we reason so we could survive.
That helps us outdo all the other animals in theory, right?
Yeah.
Yep. But why should that be going on in here? Where does it come from? Remember, they can't take the brain apart and go synapse here, firing synapse here, all that stuff. So the question is, remember, go back to the slave boy. Why was the slave boy able to figure out, although I have to be honest, I think the Socrates of Plato leads him on too much to say that he actually gets it by himself. But he does recognize it's the right answer to some degree. why should humans have that logical ability? And as far as we know, for back then, that no other animal has that degree of logical ability, reasoning ability. Yes.
Well, it's hard, especially back then. You couldn't, like, people weren't cutting up humans, and, like, you can't prove that logical thinking comes from the brain, but you
Right.
can say from experience, you have seen humans make logical decisions.
They seem capable of acting in a
they-
logical way.
are capable of doing it.
The point is, why? Animals have this, right? They don't seem to be able to do logical steps like humans do. You were going to say something.
I was pretty much just going to echo that. Like, it's advantageous for us to be able to reason, so I guess that did it.
Sort of. Maybe. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying sort of.
You can also argue that humans possess more curiosity towards what we don't know than other animals don't showcase curiosity the way we do. So it drives us to understand. It's not necessarily their brains can't comprehend it, but they don't have any reason to utilize such abilities.
Aren't puppies curious?
What's curious?
Puppies?
Puppies?
Kittens?
Well, they're just gonna flop there. They're just gonna flop there, in my experience.
My puppies always get into everything I don't want them to get into and tear everything to pieces and all that, and the kittens climb up on the top and won't come down and everything else. Chimpanzees are pretty curious, right? To some degree, but depending how you grow, but you actually after about 3 years, the puppies grow into dogs and they're not quite that curious anymore. They like their favorite little thing to chew on, but they're not going around the house investigating everything.
So, I agree that a lot of animals are very curious, for example, and also very smart, and they learn really fast. Octopi can learn how to open up a jar by themselves by being curious and investigating. The reason why we're probably capable of doing so many things animals are not capable of is evolution, and also when you compare our brains to other animals' brains. So our brains are pretty good. No, that's wrong. They're pretty big in comparison to other animals, and especially like chimpanzees. And they also, so throughout evolution, we had a different diet from our ancestors, and also then over time, things just added up. For example, not just the different diets, but movement, like hunting and gathering, more oxygen intake, then also...
You're giving a very good 20th century answer, but we're back 2,400 years ago. Right? And then dolphins have bigger brains than we have. Right? And I believe by body mass ratio, right? Take their brain, put our brain on the scale, put our bodies, I think they do better than we do. Right, but they don't have hands and all that. Yes. You can say something.
Oh, to your comment about dolphins, yeah, they do have a bigger brain than us proportionally by body weight, but they don't have the cell guys, so they can't do as much processing.
And have what?
They cannot process, so like the ridges within your brain, they're not as deep, so they can't actually.
Would they be if they had hands and stuff like that could do things?
I suppose that it could develop, because you would have to like learn more.
You have to use it.
Yeah.
Use it. Okay. Well, let's go back to what this is. Recollection says that your soul exists before your present incarnation, and that it sees all the ideal forms, right? And using that, it can reason from those principles to things concerning this world, even though the things in this world are not as perfect as the forms. But my question is, how is it that humans can use logic to reason without bringing in evolution? So why are we logical? We don't have to be. We could just be, feral animals that run around and do whatever they do, use power to control everybody around us, and then just be practical about something. Yes,
Do you mean the,
you have to speak up.
okay, like, I mean like, for why human can be, I think it's like, biologically we have.
You gotta be more platonic. You gotta go back in time.
Okay, okay, one more thing is, I have a question that I think, there is an experiment in psychology, which is that the dog of that rule. That is also like the dog, it shows like dog can connect it with like the food and also encouraging. I think the dog.
Animals make connections, cause and effect connections.
Yeah.
I mean, chimpanzees have some logical abilities. Pigeons can add numbers. There was that gorilla that was said to be able to talk in sign language. Right? There was a little octopi. They were in a lab, and crabs were disappearing. So his little aquarium's over here, and there's an aquarium over there with about 20 crabs. And one by one, they were disappearing. And it turned out when the lights went off, the crab climbed out, somehow got out, went all the way over there, got inside, grabbed the crab for a little midnight snack, ate it, came back, and went back innocently back to its aquarium. And they'd come in and go, "What happened to the crab?" But it was him. Yes.
So, well, you asked why humans don't decide to go crazy and make logic.
Well, they're not crazy. We could be
We
feral.
could be feral.
You know books,
Probably
no
because
parents
of
teaching you
pride.
anything. Just survive if you survive, and you don't survive, you don't survive.
Probably because of pride.
Pride?
At least I'd say that is a good answer for back then. You're too proud to behave that way.
Well, okay, we weren't asking particularly why we don't just throw our kids out and go make it in the world. You're 7 years old. Good luck. Here's a spear. Here's a flint. Go make fire. Go chase animals. More in the sense that our logical abilities develop more the more abstract we think about things. Whereas out in the world, it's like kill that squirrel, run from that tiger, make some hot water, whatever it is. You have logical skills, but they're not abstractly. And here the boy did an abstract problem. How many of you could have solved that problem if I gave you 15 minutes by yourself? So you would have been able to figure out how to construct square. Yes. Because usually when I give it to 101, I get a lot of stares, scratches, and we had geometry during COVID, stuff like that. Who knows how to construct a length of the square root of 7? You know how to do that? Anybody? Yes.
You make a square with sides of 14, and then connect it with pulse. You make a 7.
Wouldn't that do it? Wouldn't that do it?
7 each side.
What, each side 7? Square, we want the square root of 7. 7 and 7. You're saying this is the square root of 7? It's not utterly obvious. You can do it by, once you have 2, square root of 2, you then add on a perpendicular, that creates a new square, that gives you the square root of 3. Add on a perpendicular, you get 2. And add another perpendicular, you get square root of 5, square root of 6. It's kind of cool, it kind of goes like that. But it's not utterly obvious. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's move on from this, if I can get the computer to cooperate. I can get myself to cooperate. All right, 3 questions. Does the boy understand or only recognize how the drawing of the line segments to the midpoints of the new square will produce a square that's double the area of the original square? After all, show of hands, please. How many of us right now could do the classical proof of the Pythagorean theorem or its more general form, the cosine law for triangles? Okay. The classical proof. I don't mean the one you get in high school geometry nowadays. I mean the one with 7 lines going back and forth.
The one with the triangle and then the squares.
Yeah, I'll come over. Say it again?
The one with the triangle and the squares coming off it.
Yeah, the 3 squares and the triangle, and you draw all these different lines and you work out the ratios. Nowadays, they do it by similar proportions. Right. drop a line. But that proof itself is very hard. It's not easy to do. How many of us could do that right now? Maybe? What about the cosine law? What's your major?
I'm undecided.
Well, you're undecided, leaning toward where?
I don't know. I like everything.
What was the last math course you took?
Last year,
Year or high school?
high school.
What's it?
It was in German. It was in German. I'm from Austria.
All right, well, what did you got? Well, when I was in Germany, it was very high math.
Yeah.
It was much higher than what it is here. Much stricter. We were forbidden to make mistakes by the teacher, and you could not erase anything. So do you remember what the last topics were?
Yeah. Functions.
So you've had pre-calculus and stuff like that?
Yeah.
High level geometry, okay. So we have one. Anybody else? One going once, twice? Well, why don't you become a philosophy and math major? Do the phone.
Is this French? I don't know.
Well, think about it.
I'm in the philosophy of law club though,
All right.
so I do enjoy philosophy.
So do you feel the boy really understands how to do the proof, or he just kind of followed the pattern? If you took out I-95, I could probably get to correlate him and just keep going east, right, per se. But I don't know. Well, there's a Jesuit. You know, on Hamilton, you head down and you want to go to Seattle, but how do you go to Seattle? So we're heading down Hamilton. Seattle's over there. How do you go to Seattle? You go down Hamilton? Nobody goes down Hamilton to Seattle?
You go the opposite way.
You go the opposite. It doesn't make any sense, right? So there was a Jesuit visiting from back east, and he thought, you just go west, young man, right? And he ended up all the way out in Helena before he finally, but he stopped to get gas. He goes, isn't Seattle pretty close now? And they go, what happened? Well, you're from Spokane. This happens once in a while. Confusing, right? So remember, the road to Larissa is in the middle. If the pathway to Larissa, which is a little town near Athens, were washed out, so there's no more pass, no more way to get, would you know how to get there? Someone who had knowledge would know how to get there, but someone who just watched their Google GPS thing, right, would not know how to get there. Does that make sense? So I think in some sense the boy with Socrates as his little GPS knows how to do it, but I don't think that he could do the square root of 7. I don't think. Does that make sense? We talk about this as the square root of 2, a number in the same sense as counting numbers. I don't think so. Is Plato justified in using his theory on how mathematical knowledge is acquired to explain how virtue is acquired and what virtue may be? Read the Republic, read the Phaedo, read the Phaedrus, a few other actions and all that, and you'll get a deeper idea, yes or no, yes.
I think in theory it might work, but practically it's a bit harder to acquire virtue than acquire basic math skills. So math you can just learn and you can just memorize a lot.
Well, each connection, each step follows, right?
Yes.
Whereas with virtue, you can bend over backwards to be very nice to a person, and what happens?
They still think
They take your wallet, or take, I'm not a saint, I'm a sinner, but I did let a homeless man live in my little station wagon for 2 weeks, and then he just drove away with it. I got a call from Reno saying, is this your car? And I go, I think it is. I haven't seen it for 2 days. Well, it's up in Reno. Well, he decided he was going to go have some fun with a friend over in Reno. But you can do that. It's very hard. You can do something very virtuous, or you think it's virtuous, and you do not get recompense that makes you want to continue to be virtuous in that sense and way. Yes.
Math is a very hard definition. It's always going to be true no matter how you apply it. It's not, you can't break the law of, let's say, the cosine law of the triangles. You can't break it, so to speak. But virtue, because that has so much more of a soft definition compared person to person, culture, to everything. You can't apply the same theory to it because the theory depends on hard constraints. And when you press it up against virtue, it just collapses. Sort
You
of.
don't believe there's any universal way to be virtuous?
Not particularly, no.
All right. Yes, contestant number 3.
I also think for virtue you need more of a feeling around it, and you need to like. So for math, you can learn it. Anyone can learn it with a lot of tutoring, but I don't think you can tutor someone to be virtuous.
Which was the problem that was asked earlier about the rich kids not turning out always the best, even though they don't.
Exactly. I think you need to. It's like a thing with kids growing up. If kids grow up in different situations, then no matter how much like teach them to be virtuous, I think that if you grew up with good like idols and like parents that gave you like helped you with social skills,
Mhm.
and you grow up in a good environment, you're going to be more virtuous than someone else.
The opportunity to be so. Right.
Yes, more opportunities.
Oh, sorry.
I think Plato is actually justified in using the mathematical knowledge if we're understanding the GPS type education that Plato is doing with the boy, and saying that he understands it if he has that help, and he might not be able to continue applying it, but he still can follow this path to virtue if he has this guide and eventually understand it. Because you
It's
can,
open.
yeah, and you can eventually learn a math problem. You start off without any knowledge of math, and you have a teacher that helps you understand 1 + 1, and then eventually square root, and then eventually pre-calculus. And the same can be said with virtue. You observe it from your parents, and then you eventually get better at it, or you can just not reap the consequences or the rewards, and then you give up on it. But if you continue having a GPS, then you can get better at it.
Sound very Aristotelian. Good practice and good ways of doing things. Now, here's for my instance. I was adopted by my uncle because my parents died when I was young. But I spent 2 years living with my grandparents. Now, my grandparents would be 140 and 138 years old now. And I was inculcated with virtues from the late 1800s, basically, which is always, always, always do your duty. There is no excuse for not doing your duty. Never, ever lie. Keep every single promise you make. Don't borrow money unless you absolutely have to, and pay it back as soon as possible. Does that make sense? And I feel slightly out of king, shall we say, with the late 21st century, where those are not exactly held up to be the supreme virtues. Does that make sense? So yeah, you think about where you grow up and how you grow up and how much influence your parents have or grandparents have. See if we can get this to work. You know, I do think, David, who am I referencing here? I do think that computers are the spawn of Satan, the devil. What church theologian said that? Think hard. We'll come back to you. Anybody? Studio audience on this side? No? Think about it. It'll come to you. 2nd century. How does it know when you're talking? It says talking, David Calhoun. How does it know it's you?
Yeah, well, it says that because it's my.
Okay. Not as fascinating.
You're quite innocent of technology.
I am. Thank God Almighty.
I still want to ask you, there's somebody in the 2nd century who's talking about the evil of computers? Is that what you just said?
He meets Marcion. You know who Marcion was? And Marcion greets him as a fellow Christian. And he says, I will not greet you because you are the spawn of Satan. You think about it.
Sorry?
You think about who said that to him.
Marcion.
Yes.
I don't remember.
Just think, it'll come back to you. Senior moments.
But what does that have to do with computers?
Because I think computers are the spawn of Satan.
So you were just referring to the phrase on.
Yeah, give me an IBM selector with a erase key, and I'm a happy soul. That's all. I don't need computers. I hate computers. As I said, I think they are the offspring. Okay, now, so here we've had Plato, 400 BC, St. Paul, probably around 50 AD, wrote this in a letter. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is proper, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, not eros lovely, but lovely in appropriateness, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, ponder such actions, for whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put them into practice. For the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will preserve your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Now, Paul has had his conversion right, and he thinks that Jesus is indeed the Son of the living God. And if you imitate Jesus the best you can, you will live a virtuous life. Can St. Paul, to a very large degree, be said to agree with Socrates that in order to be virtuous, we must be compassionate? Somebody said compassionate over here. In all the ways we relate to our fellow humans. So I don't get to drive my Ford 1940 6-inch steel pickup and take out a few people who are crisscrossing my life on the way to Coeur d'Alene like I would like to. Right? We must relate to our fellow humans in a virtuous manner. If we wish to be wise, now here's the point. If we wish to be wise, we must understand how to exercise the virtues appropriately, or as Aristotle wrote, how to carry out the proper actions in the proper manner at the proper times, for proper reasons. Is that a theoretical understanding? Can you just go get a big book and read about how to be virtuous and do that day in and day out? No. You say no. Anybody else? Over here? I'm sorry, you're way over there. Anybody? You in the back, you said something at the very beginning. What do you think?
Ask question again. Ask question again.
Could you just get a big book on virtues? How to be virtuous. Like those how-to books you can buy at the store, right? And just read it, and then put it away and go out and live a virtuous life.
You have to read it and then practice it.
You have to try it out, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to compare it to, like, if I have a reading in one of my classes, and I just read what we're supposed to read, and then I don't participate in the discussion, because I just don't want to.
Oh.
Did I really understand the reading? Isn't
I
that
would think
similar?
I understand it at a very deep level. So I had a student yesterday, he's in a history course, and it's on the 60s, but they're studying the 50s a little bit to get an idea of what's happening. And McCarthy comes up. You know what McCarthyism was? Some people. So McCarthy wanted to make his political career zoom a bit more, right? Junior senator from Wisconsin. And so he decided that there were communists all over the place in the U.S. government, and it was his duty to hunt them down. A little kind of like a little mini Trump in a way. I've got accusations. And he actually held up a piece of paper, well, a couple pages saying, this is a list of 200 communists in the State Department. This is like 1950-ish. What's going on in 1950? The Korean War, right? World War II was supposed to end all wars, right? But the North Koreans invaded South Korea in 1950. And people are going, why are my sons being sent off to fight in Korea? Just finished World War II less than 5 years before that, right? What's going on here? And McCarthy makes a lot of political hay, saying Truman is soft on communism. He's not fighting the Korean War the way he should be fighting the Korean War. Why are we letting the communists do all this stuff? Well, there were some communists in the government. But most of those communists were people in the 1930s when the Great Depression was going on, who said capitalism has utterly failed. We have to do something. Right? They weren't aware of what Stalin was doing in Russia and all that. And so they were kind of like kind-hearted communists. They wanted more like socialism, like the Swedish socialism in a certain sense. They certainly didn't want people rounded up, put in gulags. But they had joined the American Communist Party, and the government had records of those cards, and they'd be called before Congress. Are you now, or have you ever been a communist? And they'd go, well, when I was in college, I was for 2 years or something like that. Oh, you're a communist, you have to be thrown out of the government, you have to be fired. They're not Stalinist communists. All right. If you run into somebody like McCarthy, what do? He's saying these are communists and they have to be thrown out of the government. I don't care if they joined the party 20 years ago when they were a sophomore in college, right? During the Great Depression. Out they go. There's no mercy. How do you balance? You've read the book, but how do you balance the actual reality of trying to live a virtuous life in the world we live in? Where not everybody tells the whole and entire truth all the time, yes? You don't know everything about everybody. You don't know everything about the world. Can you do that? Can you be a completely virtuous person? Yes.
So the question is what we would say to McCarthy, or can we be a virtuous person if we just...
Well, both. Because he's saying they are communists and they're a threat to America. Right? And we're in the Korean War. And Stalin has the not H-bomb. He's going to get the H-bomb, but he has the A-bomb. And what's going on in this world? It's not safe for democracy anymore. So should all the communists be hunted down and thrown out even though they just joined the Communist Party when they were 19? Because capitalism had failed, Great Depression had failed?
Well, if they just joined the party in college, I think a lot of people have done worse things in college, and I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt.
Have you seen Oppenheimer?
No.
Yes? No? Well, some of Oppenheimer's friends had joined the Communist Party during the 30s, and then he's brought before the board. And was he a communist or not? Well, his wife was kind of a communist, and his brother was a communist in terms of signing the cards and all that, going to the meetings. So, tell us, Dr. Oppenheimer, are you a communist or not? No, I'm not. Well, then why were you going to these meetings back in the late 30s if you're not a communist?
For fun. Maybe for fun, like you.
Well, not for fun, but what is a communist wife? But he was interested in trying to help people because the depression was so bad. But he was not a true blue communist, but he's tainted, right? And if you want the highest security to work on the H-bomb or something else, you can't have it if you're ever associated with communists. Does that make sense? But who knows what to do in that situation automatically? Anybody? I don't think so. I don't think any of us are that wise to be able to figure out every situation is why. Makes sense. I will give you an example. This is not sexist, it's just life. When I was a freshman, there was a girl handing out the Spartacus League. Does anybody know what the Spartacus League was? Trotskyites of the world unite. She was handing these out, and she was Irish, and she had the most beautiful red hair and green eyes, and I was smitten. And so what did I do? I joined the Spartacus League, hoping to go to meetings and maybe something would happen. Unfortunately, they sent the Spartacus little newsletter home to my house, and my mom got it, and my mom is about as anti-communist as you could ever hope to be, and I got this ultimatum: leave the club or no tuition, move out of the house, and whatever else goes on. So true love was denied there. It happens. We make this. I don't think it's a mistake. I'm glad I did. But anyhow, all right. So here's a Christian, St. Paul, to me at least, saying something very similar to what Socrates, Plato was saying. Does that make sense? And they both believe there's a soul. All right. Now the question we'd asked earlier: how difficult it is to be virtuous day in, day out, day in, day out. I admit I have thoughts when I had somebody tailgating, I'm not kidding, like that, for 2 miles. And I can't get over because there's only 2 lanes and there's trucks and everything. I said to myself, and I like to say to that person, there's trucks all over here, there's trucks above, there's nowhere to go. So why are you tailgating me, right? But I had distinct thoughts that it wouldn't really bother me if his front wheel came off and he spun off and flipped over. I don't want him dead, I just want his car destroyed. It really would bother me at that point. Does that make sense? All right. So how do we do that? How do we persevere? Now this is three things. One from St. Paul, or at least it's supposed to be St. Paul, the letter to Hebrews. The Parmenides is a Platonic dialogue, and the Phaedrus, where they go very much into what the soul does know, what dialectics does, and everything else. You need to persevere so that when you've done the will of God, you will receive what God has promised. In Parmenides, which is where I quoted to you some 27 years ago, only a person with exceptional gifts will be able to see that a form or essence just by itself does exist in each case. And it requires someone still more remarkable to discover these essences and guide anyone else in the search of understanding. Parmenides has boxed Socrates' ears for about 25 pages with about 8 different arguments, right? And yet, Parmenides does say to Socrates, now Socrates is only 20 years old. It's possible to use the dialectic, but you have to have exceptional gifts, and then you have to be even more remarkable to discover these essences and guide anyone else in the search for understanding. And then in the Phaedrus, yet one will assuredly never acquire such confidence, the type Parmenides is talking about, without considerable diligence, which the wise person should not exert for the sake of speaking to and dealing with his fellow humans, but rather that one be able to seek what is pleasing to the divine. Now go back to the thing about humans have logical abilities. The ability to reason is a gift from the gods, or God. Right? And if used appropriately, you live the virtuous life. And if you live the virtuous life, you please the gods with your life. Make sense? Now somehow I got it to move, but I don't know how. Oh, there we go. So the letter to the Romans, our Creator alone is wise, according to St. Paul. Remember, what does Socrates say in the Apology? Who's read the Apology? Haven't read the Apology yet? Huh? Okay. Who's in charge of the graduate program here? What is going on? All graduate students, first thing they should read is the Apology. Get a memo to whoever in charge of the thing. Let's get that done. All right. Does Socrates admit that he's wise in the Apology? He goes to the oracle of Delphi, and what do they say? Well, his friend does. What is his friend here from the oracle? No one is. Oh, here you are. Speak up. No one is wiser than Socrates. And Socrates says, I didn't understand what that meant. What do you mean, no one's wiser than me? Are we all just equally dumb, right? We're all equally unwise, and so none of us are better than anybody else. Or what's going on here? And Socrates goes on to explain, wisdom is largely based on admitting, a good part of setting the foundational work for wisdom is based on admitting what you do know and what you don't know. And when you really think about it, you really don't know very much. Right? So why is it then so difficult? Why does it require such perseverance to become wiser, let alone wise? Wisdom is not evidently achieved by pure deduction. Can one just sit down and think oneself into becoming wise? Yes, gentlemen, anybody? This row, back row? Can you just sit down and think yourself to become wise? Say you wanted to be an NBA basketball player. Do you think you could just sit down with the rule book and study it and then just think about, I will be a great basketball player, I shall be a great basketball player, and then go out and score 70? Probably not very likely. Yes.
Yes. Oh, but was the Apology the one with all that?
He's been on trial. He's on trial. He's being asked, why are you being such a pain in the neck, right? And embarrassing powerful people, things like that.
Yeah.
Why? And he's accused of teaching people not to believe in the typical gods of Athens and the Greeks, right? And corrupting the young. And he gives various arguments as to why those aren't true.
Okay.
But he does talk about, why does he do this? Because his friend went to Delphi and said, no one's wiser than Socrates. And Socrates says, It's not that I'm wise or anything else, it's that I'm willing to admit that I don't know a lot of things. Maybe I don't know anything.
Isn't the quote,
I'm not an expert in it.
with all that I do know is that I know nothing or something
Yes.
like that?
I'm aware that I'm aware that I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And then in the strong sense of knowledge. Okay. Now, I had a student one summer, devoted philosophy student, and he said, I'm just going to meditate on how to become wise all summer long, 4 hours a day. And he actually did try that, but it didn't work out. Or is it rather the case that if we become more and more honest with ourselves, we realize just how unwise we are in our terms of our desires to do the will of our Creator and our interactions with our fellow humans? Getting to the end now. I do this right. All right. So, you said compassion, yes? So here's a quote from St. Augustine and a quote from Aeschylus, who was a playwright. Is it true that compassion arises only among those who have suffered? I was going to a job interview at a very nice restaurant on the top of a very nice hill in a very nice neighborhood in LA. But my car broke down. My timing chain broke, which is a very strange thing because your engine will turn, but it won't do anything. And I'm wearing brand new shoes, a brand new suit and all that. And I have to climb this basically 1,500-foot hill, or mountains, what you want to call it. And I have my thumb out, and a Mercedes-Benz goes by. Cadillac goes by, no. Porsche goes by, no. Another Cadillac goes by. All these nice cars by a whole bunch of rich people go by. They will not stop. I even tried to run after a Winnebago that was chugging up the hill to grab onto the back, but I just missed it by a few feet. And then this car came by, smoking at galore, 25 years old, and she stops and pulls over and gives me a ride up. She took care of the horses of the rich people up there. And in a certain sense, it struck me, those people who have had a lot of things not go right in their life are a lot more willing to help people who are also having either temporary or other things going on than most people. Not everybody who's rich. Some people are very rich or very nice. But does this make sense? So if you haven't suffered much, as Augustine's wondering about, how great will your compassion be for others? And this is the quote from Aeschylus. So even in our sleep, agonies which we cannot forget fall drop by drop upon the heart, until beyond our own despairing, so against our wills, they become seeds of wisdom through the timely grace of God. Yes?
So basically, he says if you make mistakes or have hardships, you learn something. Very
Augustine, or
positive.
you're talking about Aeschylus?
Aeschylus.
Oh.
Yeah.
But the timely grace of God, I want virtue and I want it now, right?
Good luck.
May not happen. So that was an interweaving of some classical literature, some Christian thinkers, and Plato. All right, thank you for coming. Have a good Thursday night, Friday. We'll see you next year, maybe, if I'm invited back, when I'm doing the world tour with the Rolling Stones. I have one more slide. A certain professor decided last fall to do this. Let his beard grow. And so I said to him one day, you look just like John Brown. His wife has asked him to trim his beard a little bit, but he's still, to a large extent, you should stand up and give the audience. Yes. And yes,
I'm not nearly as angry as John.
and the curiosity is, I'm actually related to John Brown. Great grandfather. Thank you. Good time.